Wayne Ho of CPC. Wayne is President and CEO of Chinese American Planning Council, the nation's largest Asian American social service agency and a true leader in our community. Wayne and I go way back, and it's been an honor to work with CPC on their retirement plan. Wayne, thank you for the trust you've placed in Mutual of America. It means a great deal. He also serves on as board chair of the Human Services Council, where many of the member organizations are part of our broader client family. His leadership and impact across the sector continues to inspire all of us. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Wayne. And with that, I'll pass it over to Tara.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Wayne. Can you see us now, Wayne?
I can. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Good. Yes, and we can hear you. And thank you for everyone for holding on. We were having some technical difficulties. I think it all started from our friendly banter about where Wayne went to school and where my son goes to school, and then he decided that he didn't want to work with us, and but we got it together. So I'm going to read your bio. We're going to jump right in. We're going to read your short bio. Yes, your short bio. I have a long one and a short one. We're going to read the short one. And thank you again, Wayne, for holding on for us while we work through the technical difficulties. So Wayne Ho is the president and CEO of the Chinese American Planning Council, CPC, the nation's largest Asian American social services agency. CPC serves over 80,000 New Yorkers of all ages and backgrounds in the areas of education, family support, community, and economic empowerment. Wayne previously held leadership roles at the Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies, FPWA, and the Coalition for Asian American Children and Families, CACF, and serves on numerous nonprofit and governmental boards, including the Human Services Council, the National Council for Asian Pacific American Community Development, and the New York State Not-for-Profit Contracting Advisory Committee. Wayne received his Bachelor's of Arts from the first number one public school in America, which is UC Berkeley or Cal. My son goes to UCLA, which is also number one, depending on the day that you ask AI. And his master's degree in public policy from a place we all know, Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. And thank you for the friendly bantering. It was fun chatting with you before we got started. Steve, I think we're going to let you go, so you don't have to stare at us. Lawrence is going to let you go at some point. But Wayne, let's just jump right in. And we really prepared so many great questions for you that hopefully we'll get through some of them. But I have a feeling that even in the 34 minutes that we have left, you'll make a big impact to our community. First and foremost, I always like to say the Heritage and Awareness series that we do gives us a really wonderful opportunity to showcase our clients. And depending on what your role is, you may or may not get to meet the people that we do work for. And so I always like to say that we welcome you, because if it was not for you, there would not be us. And so this is just a really great way to allow the people who don't get to see the day-to-day of the people that we work with understand the people that we serve. And by having each of the leaders here, it gives us a direct link into the work that we do and the relevancy of the work that we do. The title of our, which I've said before, our 2026 inclusion theme is Connected by Purpose, United in Progress. This particular session we titled Purpose in Action, Leadership Rooted in Community, Identity, and Progress. And so with that, let's just talk about who you are and your identity. So you became the president and CEO of CPC in 2017, which, as I said before, you're leading the nation's largest Asian American social service at a time of significant growth and change for the AAPI community. But your background is vast, and you're, as we know, there's always a story to get us to where we are today. And yours started with someone who immigrated here from Singapore. You grew up in California, as I mentioned, and you moved to Massachusetts to earn your master's degree. And then you ultimately landed in New York City, finding your voice and leadership through education and community advocacy. What experiences did you have along the way that helped to shape your sense of purpose? and how do they influence how you lead not only the organization today, but the boards that you sit on? So who are you, and how did you arrive at this as your mission and your calling?
Sure. First, thanks for inviting me to be here. I really appreciate it. And I know we had our friendly banter about schools. Just to be clear, UC Berkeley folks and UCLA folks are cool, except for football games. But we all mutually agreed to not like Stanford University and USC, so
There we
that's
go.
all good.
On this, we can
And
agree.
yeah, we can agree with that. Although you're wearing red today.
I'm
Uh,
very-
and and I do want to acknowledge Stephen Ortiz, who's been working with me through all three of the nonprofits I've led in New York City, and he's always been a great partner through Mutual America and bringing a lot of the team together to support my staff in their retirement goals. And so, thank you again for being here. Happy AAPI Heritage Month. Um, I'm an immigrant. I was born in another country. My family immigrated to California when I was very, very young. And my experiences growing up is really what shaped me to become the leader that I am today and what I wanted to do. Um, I didn't speak English. My mom and dad's degrees from other countries did not work here in the United States, so they had to find other jobs. I grew up in ESL for a few years, but I was fortunate to go to good public schools. But my brother and I were just one of a handful of kids of color in our schools growing up. And I was fortunate to get to UC Berkeley. And when I got there, I feel like you either go all in on the activism or you run away from the activism. And I went all in the mid 90s when the state of California was getting bad propositions passed where they're eliminating affirmative action and they're trying to take away public benefits from undocumented immigrants. And they were doing three strikes and you're out on criminal justice reform. Or they were voting that defining marriages between only a man and a woman. And they eliminated bilingual education. And I just realized that for myself, growing up and getting into more diverse education and having more diverse populations, that I truly believe that public education is a great equalizer in this country, and that if everyone had opportunity, they could make it. And there were times when my family and I had opportunities. There were times when my family and I did not. And I feel that it's been my calling to make sure that all communities, whether you have a developmental disability, you're LGBTQ plus, you're living with HIV AIDS, you're an immigrant, whether documented or not, that if you just had opportunities in this country, that you could support not only yourself and your family, but you could also give back to your neighborhood and your community.
Yeah, which I say it often. I am a child of immigrants too, so I'm first generation. And so I was born here, but I'm first generation. And I do think much of that story does shape you, the way that you view the hope and the potential of the country, right? So I totally align with what you say. So you made it here to New York, and you are representing the needs of Chinese American um, through the organization that you joined, particularly those who are senior citizens. Um, and this is just it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time. Period. That's the whole entire sentence. And I think with that, you find that there are people who are afraid to access the public benefits that you speak of, or they're afraid to report harm, particularly when they're eligible or in need. And I also do think at times when someone is an immigrant here, you're just thankful for being here, so you almost don't want to rock the boat too much, and so it can be a difficult one. I'm wondering if you can relay for the people that are on our call, what are the fears that you're hearing most often? What's going on with the people that are your constituents, and how are you working to help them to build trust to get the resources that they so rightfully deserve?
So CPC, the Chinese American Planning Council, we were founded in 1965. So our founders were teachers and civic leaders in Chinatown in New York City, and they were inspired by the civil rights movement, and they realized with the 1965 Immigration Reform Act, there would be an influx of Chinese immigrants coming to the United States, and they would need opportunities in their new homeland and from folks who understood their culture and spoke their language and dialects. And that's something we carry forward today, that we want to promote the social and economic progress of not only Chinese Americans, but other immigrant and low income communities. A lot of people don't know that of the major racial groups in New York City, Asian Americans actually have the highest rate of poverty. Nearly 30% of all Asian Americans in New York City struggle with poverty. It gets worse if you're an older adult. And what's happening now, it's just been very hard. And we can put aside partisan politics, we can put aside our feelings on the president, but on a day-to-day basis, I have individuals who are giving up public benefits, whether it's food stamps, housing vouchers, health insurance, that they're legally eligible for. They're giving them up because they don't trust the federal government. They don't know what the information is going to do. They've heard enough stories in the news or have enough friends who are legal residents with documentation who've gotten swept up in detention or stuck in courts or had other things happen to them. And several months ago, when the federal government went on pause back in the fall, we reactivated our emergency food pantries, and we had over 1,000 people, mostly seniors, standing outside waiting for food. Some showed up as early as 3 a.m. in the morning because they didn't know how they're going to get the next meal on their table. And that's where organizations like CPC and other community-based organizations become important, is because we have to translate what is happening from federal policy to our community members. We understand the language and the culture, so we can be trusted sources of information. We can tell them why it's okay to use this public benefit, why it's okay to come to our community centers. And while, although we're mostly government contracted, that we remain a safe space, we can come to us to learn English, become a citizen, register to vote, get the food that you want, come to our senior centers and live in our affordable housing. So that's where while our population has changed and we've grown from Chinatown to Flushing and Elmhurst and throughout Brooklyn, we've remained steadfast in our mission that everyone should have the opportunities they need, not only to survive, but to thrive throughout New York City.
Yeah, this is, I may get this wrong. We do these conversations. We also send out what we call a spotlight, and the spotlight just features, it's a spotlight on the month. So key figures, and we always put some data on it because I love data. And when you say that you are the Asian population, I don't remember if it's Asian or Chinese, was the most impoverished in New York City. But I also feel like I remember in one of our facts that also were the ones that had the highest college attainment levels. Is that correct? So
That is
can you
yeah,
square the two for me? What
sure.
are those things for
Yeah.
me?
No, that's a great question. So one of the challenges with the Asian American community, and when I say Asian American, I mean all the 40 ethnic groups.
I know it's
So
broad, very broad. Yeah.
Chinese, Korean, Filipino, Vietnamese, Cambodian, Hmong. There's a lot. We're diverse. So unlike the white, black, and Latinx community, that's a unimodal community. So the distribution is pretty unimodal in terms of poverty, college attainment, educational attainment, housing opportunities. The Asian American community is actually bimodal. So there's two humps. So, we're all wonky folks here. So there's two humps. So you will get a population that has high college attainment, high socioeconomic status, high wage earners. And on the other side, you'll have those that have very low college attainment, high levels of poverty, high struggles. And I think that's always the challenge, is that in the Asian American community, we call it the model minority stereotype. That a lot of people think like we're going to all the specialized high schools in New York City and we're going to all the Ivy Leagues and we're getting all the great jobs. But there's a huge portion of the population that
Seen.
has, yeah, like we have the highest foreign-born population in New York City, the highest number who are linguistically isolated, which means no one over the age of 14 in a household speaks English well. We have the highest rate of poverty based on New York City's own Center for Economic Opportunity. And that's why there's a need to make sure there's culturally and language appropriate services for the diverse Asian American community. And even the Chinese community, where we speak so many dialects, that we need to make sure that we have the proper services here for us.
I will redeem this so we can get on to both my sons. Both of my sons, by the way, speak Mandarin.
Oh, so they are more advanced at Mandarin than I am. I can order food like no one's business. I can like do numbers and I can do animals, but I figured that's only because I was reading kids' books to my children. So my own kids' Mandarin is very good, and they laugh at me all the time.
Well, you need to work on that. You need to work on that.
I can. Like, let's just keep it here because this is going to ruin my credibility leading CPC.
No, that's the number one public school. You don't even speak Mandarin. Uh, let's talk a little bit about, again, data. And you mentioned a lot of this, but already. But when you look at the data on food insecurity, mental health needs, health disparity, economic instability, what are some of the trends that stick out to you? And how are you using the insights to inform your vision for the organization and to really kind of prioritize your strategies?
Yeah, so CPC, we serve over 70,000 New Yorkers per year through about 280,000 touch points. So that means we know there's community members who come for us for multiple programs, young people who come to us for after school programs and also get a summer job through us, or older adults who live in our senior centers, or sorry, live in our senior housing and then during the day go to our senior centers. So we really have a pulse on what's going on in the community. And we know that, for example, mental health has been a challenge for our community, especially since COVID. And like some other communities, there's a lot of stigmas about mental health. Someone even told me that in Mandarin, there's actually no word for depression. So how are we giving mental health services when we don't even have certain
You will name it.
language? Yeah, like how do you name it in order to support you, especially when there's so much stigma, and are you going to shame your family by revealing this information that should be kept internal? So, as an organization, we have staff who are on the ground that really know what's going on with our young people who are living in public housing, or what's going on with undocumented immigrants during this time, or what's going on with families across generations. Because we have, for example, grandparents who drop off their grandkids at our daycare and then go to our senior center a block away. And in the evenings, the parents, after they've gone to our adult literacy programs, pick up their kids from the daycare and they go home. So we're serving the whole family. And that's where we're keeping an eye on all these trends around the cost of living. Everyone knows the cost of living is going up. And even when we built our new senior affordable housing that opened 2 years ago, and has over 110 units of affordable housing that's really targeted towards low income individuals. It's a struggle for us to get the population in there because of how their income levels are so hard and they depend so much on government support and public benefits. We also know that there's more and more college students who feel like they can't find jobs now when they graduate. So we have high school students who want to go to college, but even their own parents are saying, why do you want to go to college? You need to get a job now so you can work and support yourself and come back and give back to the family. So there's just a lot of challenges around affordability. There's a lot of challenges around mental health. There's a lot of challenges around how to navigate around community safety during this time. So we at CPC always try to be there to have the data, hear what's going on in the community, have our advocacy efforts inform decision makers, while at the same time we can pivot our programs to make sure we're meeting the needs of the community, such as us opening up our food pantries across our Manhattan, Flushing, and Brooklyn centers during this time because we know there's more food insecurity.
So when you think about the work that you're doing, obviously you can't do it alone. You have a board. I'm assuming that is who you talk through some of your competing priorities with. And I'm assuming that you also work very closely with the local and state government, I'm going to assume, to determine where you want to go. You have built housing that can't be done alone. Tell me a little bit about those kinds of relationships and how do you navigate those kinds of partnerships?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're a big organization that runs 60 programs across 40 locations in Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, and we recently opened up on a satellite office on the North Shore of Staten Island. And as an organization that does human services, we're predominantly government funded. So over 70% of our funding is from city and state government for us to do everything from daycare to after school programs, summer jobs, senior centers, supporting individuals with HIV/AIDS or with developmental disabilities. You name it, if it's a non-clinical service, we probably provide that service. And we have to work with government agencies, and government funding is great because it gives you long-term funding, it gives you a base of support, and you know what you're going to get year after year. But government funding doesn't always allow you to pivot as quickly. So whether it's because the pandemic hit and we had to go remote, or whether because we're seeing a rise in anti-Asian hate, that's where private funding comes in. So we partner with foundations, corporations, individuals to make sure we can do more innovative programming, more responsive programming. All our food pantry work right now and food distribution is not just through city contracts. It's actually through partnerships we have with the food bank or City Harvest, and individual donors have given us funding in order to do this work, because it's not part of any city or state funding that we have right now. We also work with a lot of local officials. We work closely with city council members, with borough presidents, with state assemblies, state legislators, as well as with congressional members and U.S. senators, because not only do we want to provide services to the community, we know we need to change the conditions that our community exists in. And that's where, for example, we're one of the organizations that's a leader in the Just Pay for Human Services campaign and the Fair Pay for Home Care Workers campaign, because government contracts dictate wages. They literally tell us how much we can pay a worker who does daycare, or how much we can pay a worker who is a caseworker working on child welfare issues, for example. And that's where we have been one of the leading organizations making sure that government contracts are paying better wages to our workers.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess maybe it's a blessing that 70% of your funding comes from local and state and not federal. But I'll just ask, just because I feel like I've asked everyone
Yep.
for the last 2 years, have any of the federal changes impacted your ability to provide services at all, or do you feel like you're primarily shielded from that because you are more New York centric?
No, it's been challenging in different ways. We're obviously keeping an eye on what's happening federally. So not just in terms of the fears that are going on in our community members. The budget that was recently passed by the feds, we lost $500,000 in our mental health services. We had funding for mental health services that was a congressional item through our Congress members and our U.S. senators here in New York. And unfortunately, now they're in the minority, much of that funding was taken away. So we haven't been able to provide as much mental health services during this time. We also, through our
What do you
services,
do? Do you just not, you just can't? Like, what do you do?
yeah, we basically have to cut the program. So it's a mix. Oh, we've been fortunate that those staff that are on those programs, we shifted them around to other programs. We did have private funders like Trinity Church Wall Street come in and fill some of the gaps, so we could hold on to one of the licensed mental health providers to continue some of the programming. But our affordable housing does get federal housing vouchers, and so we're keeping an eye on what's happening with the HUD budget. Our home care services that serve older adults and people with disabilities is entirely Medicaid funded. So it's a match through the feds, through the state. So we're waiting to see what happens in the state budget to make sure that those programs continue. As much as private funding is helpful to help us pivot and meet current needs, the reality is government funding is huge, and foundations and individuals and corporations cannot fill multi-million-dollar budget gaps for us. And that's where our policy and advocacy comes in, that we work closely with city and state legislators to know why these services remain important to our community members.
So it feels like your role is probably part strategist, part lobbyist, part community activist. It's probably part of a lot of different
It,
hats you wear.
it is. When I joined CTC 9 years ago, I had dark hair, I had no gray. And then now, like, you see what you get with not a lot of hair and definitely a lot more gray. And my two children remind me every day about my weight gain and my hair loss.
Well, I will say less hair gives you can get out the house quicker. You don't have to worry about brushing your hair. So maybe that's a
It's true. It's
it's
true.
true.
During COVID, I was able to just shave my head every week like I normally do. Whereas all my colleagues started having like, the weird man buns growing in weird places,
See? So,
too.
so
So I
less
can look out.
nurses. I do have a few more questions in reserve, but I see a lot of people laughing at I don't think they're laughing at your bald head. I
I
think
hope
they're
not. I
laughing
hope not.
with your bald head is what I think that they're doing. That's a good way that I'm gonna interpret it. I'm gonna bring Anita on just to see if we have any questions. I didn't tell people they had questions, but I think people know that they can ask questions. And if not, I do want to talk to you about the bamboo ceiling. Let's just see if
Yeah.
Anita has anything to add on.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much. Definitely have learned a lot from the brief time so far, Wayne, and I thank you. As of right now, hold on, something has just come in. We actually do have a question, and we also have a comment. First comment that came in is that oh my gosh, they absolutely love the song. So that's definitely a nod to that. But here's the question that has come in. Many Asian professionals are represented in technical and hands-on roles, but still less represented at the executive or board level. For people who are strong executors but may not naturally gravitate towards self-promotion, what behaviors or mindset shifts help you break through into leadership spaces?
Well, whoever wrote that question, which I'm not looking right now who wrote it. Literally, that was going to be my next question. So thank you, whoever wrote that, for seeing what my questions were. And I guess that's what I alluded to in terms of the idea of the bamboo ceiling. So maybe just to explain to people what that concept is of the bamboo ceiling. And then actually, I think it would be really nice to give some very practical and tangible tips that have helped you along the way.
Sure. So the bamboo ceiling is what applies to the Asian American community, like what people say about or still say about the glass ceiling for women or for people of color in the workforce, that you can only go so far and then you're stopped. So as the person who asked the question said, it's true that there is a lot of research that shows Asian Americans are in the workforce and they're working in tech, they're working on financial services, or working in different areas, but they can never get to a management role. So, and put a different way, they're all the worker bees and they're not in management. And I think there's two things that have to be done. Uh, Let me start the systems level and I'll come down to the staff level. On the systems level, I do think that it is important for managers, for board of directors to recognize that there should be more management opportunities, not just for Asians, but obviously for women, women of color, and other people of color. That it's not just about them working hard, but it's also about them having opportunity to move up the ladder and get into executive roles. And it's an opportunity for corporations and other institutions to look at what are your promotion practices, what are your hiring practices, what's your compensation package, and what are you really doing to promote diverse leadership in a company. For individuals, I mean, I've been blessed that I've had mentors in each of the jobs that I've had, that anyone I was interested in speaking to, whether within my field or in other organizations, whether when I first started working at a nonprofit or started working in the school system, that there were individuals willing to talk to me and share advice. And I think it's important that all of us continue to lift while we climb, and that we have to give back to others. So whether it's participating in Asian American ERGs or an opportunity to be part of networks outside your company. So in this case, in the Asian American community, there is an organization nationally called Ascend, and Ascend is trying to provide these opportunities, professional development opportunities for Asian American professionals, from emerging leaders to seasoned professionals. And I think it's always important to be clear on what you're looking for. And that if you want an opportunity to grow, to be promoted, that having those conversations, and hopefully they're safe, supportive conversations with your supervisors, so you do get that support that you want. But I found that it's important not only to seek out these opportunities internally, but it's important to seek out the supports externally.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Wayne, because I do think the glass ceiling or the bamboo ceiling are all kind of the same around just not having enough representation at the top levels. And
Yep.
it's not necessarily for lack of capability. Sometimes it is lack of broader exposure. And so for the person who asked the question, it is mentorship matters. Understanding where you want to go matters, being able to articulate that. And probably more importantly, just because it's a sheer numbers thing, your mentors won't necessarily look like you, right?
Yep.
Because there's just not enough people who look like you at at that level to pull you up, and so you do have to broaden your exposure and broaden your network beyond your community, which can sometimes be uncomfortable. But that really is if you want to be able to play in that space, you have to be able to find a group of people who are just as diverse to be able to help mentor you. But
Yeah,
yes.
and along those lines, I completely agree with that. I think it's also important, as I said, to lift while you climb. If anyone has ever asked me for a meeting, whether it's a high school student, whether it's a seasoned professional in the nonprofit field, I always try to make that opportunity to respond to this person. So, don't look at another person of color or Asian American as a threat. Look at it as an ally and a colleague to support each other as we all climb together.
There's enough room for all of us, I
Yep.
think. Um, so let's go back and talk about you not knowing Mandarin and your kids knowing it, and let's talk a little bit about that. So CPC has played a long has long played a vital role in preserving Chinese and broader Asian cultural traditions through language, arts, education, intercultural activities, community celebrations. In in your introductory call with my team, you also shared that Asian Americans have to navigate having both a Chinese and an American or English name. How is the CPC helping the next generation not only think about their heritage and a sense, but also developing a sense of pride and belonging in their cultural identity? And how does the idea of dual naming reflect broader questions of visibility, identity, and belonging in the Asian community? And I will also add to that is again someone who is first generation, which I think is hilarious that both my kids speak Mandarin because we're Jamaican, and I'm like, I don't understand why you're not studying patois in college, and but as someone who too is someone who you were born in another country, I was born here. The idea of not losing your heritage, the idea of what we once called a melting pot as being the ideal is probably the opposite of what I think is important, rather being a
Hmm.
beautiful stew or a beautiful kind of what's I'm thinking of the in Louisiana when they throw everything in the pot, which I can't think of what it's called right now, but like instead of a melting pot. But so tell me about how that works at CPC. How are you at CPC thinking about
Hmm.
maintenance of, or maybe not, of
Yep.
identity, and then you can even bring it back to your own personal
Yep.
standings story.
So CPC, we serve about 70,000 New Yorkers a year, as I said, of all ages and backgrounds. So about 80% of the
Gumbo,
community,
that's what I was thinking of. Sorry.
gumbo. By the way, you mentioned Jamaica. I was just in Negril for our friend's 50th birthday party. I
Yep.
love Jamaica. Jamaica is the only place I've been to more than once for vacation. So
And you know that there
yeah.
is a huge Chinese Jamaican
Yes.
population. You know that?
Oh no, I know. The moment I get off the airplane, everyone starts calling me Mr. Chin, and I was trying to
Yes.
figure out for the longest time why, and then someone finally explained to me about
My next door
Chin and the
neighbor across the
history.
street,
Yeah.
Mr. Chung. It's
Yep.
huge, huge. Yep, huge
Yep.
Jamaican
It's a huge,
Chinese.
huge, huge name, or most common name in
Yes,
Jamaica.
yes.
So we serve about 70,000 New Yorkers a year through CPC, and about 20% are not Chinese American. They represent the diversity of New York. So Black, Brown, Jewish, other immigrant and low income community members. So we always want to be able to promote and respond to Chinese American culture, to Chinese culture, but we want to always be welcoming for anyone that comes through the door and know that it's an education opportunity. It's a cross educational opportunity. So we always make sure to celebrate the holidays. We always Chinese holidays. We always make sure to educate folks about Chinese holidays and Chinese language and Chinese traditions. So as an example, In our early childhood center, serving kids from 2 to 4. We always do things in Cantonese and Mandarin. We teach about food. We teach about the holidays and learning how to do the dragon dance. Uh, Former council member Carlina Rivera, who's Puerto Rican and went to our daycare in the Lower East Side. She always tells people that she was a CPC kid for 2, 3 years and she learned lion dancing through us and actually still remembers some of that. In our youth programs, we make sure again to celebrate the Moon Festival, Lunar New Year, AAPI Heritage Month. And we know dance and food can bring people together. So that's where during our potlucks and during our celebrations, it's a chance for kids from other backgrounds to taste other Chinese food and to participate in Chinese practices and traditions. Same thing in our senior affordable housing. Our senior affordable housing is about 80% Chinese American, but again, the other 20% represents the diversity of New York. So when it's Lunar New Year, we always do a big Lunar New Year dinner with all our 200 plus residents of our senior affordable housing. And it's a chance for other community members to understand why there's firecrackers or loud noise during Lunar New Year, what the drumming represents, what the dragon represents, and why we eat noodles and why we give away red envelopes.
Red envelopes with the
It's always
money.
about with the money, which the moment I had my kids, I can't get
You
red
stop
envelopes
getting them.
anymore. I just have to give them away, is what I've learned. So another reason not to have children is you lose your chance to get red envelopes. So we try to teach everyone from kids to young people to adults to seniors about our different traditions. But like in our community, a lot of people are foreign born and they have quote unquote Chinese names. And then when they come here, they always try to have an Americanized name just to keep it simple. So, there's a reason why you go to Starbucks and you're like, oh, my name's Bob, my name's Jack, my name's Ray. Because it's easier in general to navigate American society. But in your documentation, your papers, your paycheck, it's your driver's license, it's your legal name. And that does get into some challenges at times with when you're trying to access government buildings or access public benefits or access other services. But I think in many ways, that's what it means to not just be Chinese or not just be American, but to be Chinese American is that you're learning about American traditions while at the same time you're learning about Chinese traditions. You have your Chinese name, you have your American name, and hopefully we get to the point where everyone celebrates everybody's name and we don't look a certain way when your last name happens to be Chin or your last name happens to be Zito or your last name happens to be something that's not quote unquote a common American last name. But until that point, I think we're doing our best to make sure we're promoting traditions, celebrating traditions, while at the same time helping community members integrate as part of a diverse, to your point, not a melting pot, but a diverse New York City and a diverse United States.
Yeah, and so I wish that we could do one of these Heritage and Awareness Months for everybody
Yeah.
because there are so many different cultures to celebrate here in the United States. We pick, I think we have 7 or 8 that we do because that's all
Yeah.
my 3-person team can do. But part of the reason why we do that, as I used to say more often, was so that the unseen can be seen. And I think there is so much education about obviously the kind of the larger American history, but and we know that through our schools, and we know that actually through our lives, we experience our lives, but there's not many opportunities and we are still in some ways a quite segregated country. And so
Mm-hmm.
you may not have exposure to someone like you, Wayne, or your constituents. And that's part of the reason why I think it's really important is to lift everyone up so that we can all be visible and see that there's so much more that we have alike, but even where we have differences, it's okay. We just lost your camera. Did your camera have a 3 o'clock stop?
Yeah, no, that's good. It's back. It's back.
It's back. Yeah, but
By the way, I apologize for the tech difficulties. That's on me. It just
that's
reminds
okay.
people why I'm a nonprofit is that there's tech issues on our side.
That's perfectly fine. Well, so we are just about at time, and so I'm going to just close with one last question. And before my one last question, I do want to say thank you again. This has been a riveting conversation, and thank you for the work that you're doing across New York City at a time of need. But I'll close out by saying, um, so you do work in New York City at a time of need, and I assume that everyone's goal is ultimately to not be needed, right? And so maybe, so can you, if you think through what meaningful progress will look like over the next year, will you still be needed? And if so, what might, and you'll always be needed. So maybe in that, in what ways do you hope a decade from now you will be playing a role? Will it be still doing the same things that you're doing now, or do you envision something different?
You talking about for CPC or for myself? Because I can only lose so much hair and gain so much weight.
I
So
was talking about for your organization, but feel free
I'm
to
talking about
tell me
CPC.
about
Talk CPC.
you. So you can feel free to tell me about 10 years from now. Your kid's going to be off your payroll. Feel free to answer it however you
I
want
know,
to.
that's true. I can be honest about that, what I don't like about my kids. No,
Do record
so
this though, so you might want to be, everything lives after you say it. So be
oh,
careful
that's
what you
right,
say.
that's right. Don't share with my children.
Right.
Yeah. So, for CPC, we just had a board retreat 2 weekends ago, and we actually had this conversation that the role of any community organization should be to work ourselves out of a job.
Yeah.
And the reality is, with the history and legacy of segregation and oppression, structural racism, poverty that exists in this country, that we're going to be here, unfortunately, for a while, at least the next 10 years. But the ideal is CPC might not be going away, even if we get equality and equity. And what I mean by that is, maybe we'll no longer be dealing with the failures of society where we have to step in when there's child abuse issues going on, or we have to build affordable housing, or we have to make sure that individuals are succeeding in school, that we're always intervening, but that it's a more asset development that we do, safe spaces for kids to play sports or individuals to celebrate their culture, or more arts programming for kids and seniors, more opportunities for individuals to be around after school, not because their parents are working multiple jobs, but because after school is an opportunity to learn and innovate. And that's where I hope that we move as a society, is that whether you're in for-profit, nonprofit, government, labor, that we are all in this together and trying to work on what's best for all community members and making sure everyone succeeds. But in the next 10 years, CPC, as the Asian American and Chinese American community grows, will continue to grow to where they are. We know there's more Chinese up in East Harlem, in the Bronx, on the North Shore of Staten Island, and we are responding and trying to get programming in that area. And we'll also do right by making sure that government contracts are more fair, compensating our staff well, and making sure that we're getting paid on time, as opposed to waiting 12 to 18 months to get our first payment from the city and state of New York.
That sounds like a fair ask. Well, Wayne, thank you so much for being with us. Truly enjoyed the conversation. I see all the smiles that are popping up in the trumpet, so I'm sure other people did as well. Lawrence, I'm going to ask you, since people like the song, maybe you can close us out with the song. And I appreciate that you have been with us through multiple organizations. Thank you very much. And Steve is on. Thank you again for introducing you to us. And I wish you a wonderful summer.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate this. And thank you everyone for joining us.